Yo guys, this is Reinhardt and this video is gonna be about the review for Guild Wars 2 when it comes to PvP. I'm gonna be making a PvP review videos for you guys to watch and actually get this idea whether you should buy a PvP game or not, or what is my overall PvP experience when it comes to purchasing a new game. So for this one I'm gonna be reviewing Guild Wars 2 and I'm gonna give a small spoiler here right now. In my opinion, don't buy the game. It has a very poor rating, and the biggest thing is I think that the Guild Wars 1 is actually a far better infrastructure when it comes to PvP than a Guild Wars 2. I believe that a lot of people were getting tricked into buying this game from a PvP perspective because there was a lot of PvP talk. Usually MMOs don't talk about PvP a lot, but there was a lot of PvP talk when it comes to coming out of the Guild Wars 2 from a development side, and everybody was like, hell yeah, we're gonna be actually having an MMO that is gonna be care about us PvPers. Boy, was I mistaken. Oh my god, there's a few people that like the game a lot, and this is kudos to them, but based on their numbers, the game sold millions of copies, and guess what happened at the very end? Only 300 to 400 people participating at a given time in PvP, and I think that's a very poor number indeed, and it has a lot to do with the actually development side completely demolishing all the PvP experience. But hey, at least they was able to cash in their game and maybe make their money worse, right? Anyway, let's get into the review itself. Boom boom! The main three parameters I decided to take for the PvP in terms of criteria is number one, character. The character development. How do you feel about your character and how do you actually develop your character in the game? The second is I decided to pick is a gameplay, PvP gameplay. What kind of gameplay does the PvP actually really offer, and is it fun? And the last but not least I decided to check is a PvP support, is how much the game actually supports and promotes the PvP environment in the game itself. When it comes to character criteria, I'm usually looking at the skills. I usually look at the gear, what kind of gear the game has to offer when it comes to PvP. I look at the talents and traits, and I also look at aesthetics. Does the gear actually looks kinda, cool? Because we're playing MMO and might as well playing a tune that has a cool freaking gear, my friends. So let's get into the game itself and let's knock out those parameters. The very first thing I need to give a props to ArenaNet is actually making AoE skills are really strong, but also not overpowered to where the enemy team is all they actually forced is to use their arrow effect skills over and over again to wipe the enemy team. Kudos to you, the best balancing AoE versus single target skills I've seen in MMO so far. This is where I stop praising the Guild Wars 2 for their skill system. And as you guys know, there's only about 10 skills you can put on your bar plus a weapon swap on average. But unfortunately, a lot of those are actually inefficient. A lot of those skills completely don't make sense, and the thing I really hate the most is that there's a lot of cookie cutter builds that have been promoted in this game at all whatsoever. And the last thing I want to tell you guys is that there is a few skills that are completely overtuned because there's only a few skills you can put on your bar, and then there's a few skills that don't make sense at all whatsoever. For example, a staff for Necromancer is an AoE ability staff where all you do is you force put a lot of arrow effect on the targets itself, and number one, the auto attack is you just throw a hand. You just throw a freaking hand that does a very little damage. Or if you go from the staff to a scepter, the scepter is all about applying dots, and then we have a number 3 ability that basically does damage based on how many conditions you have, and this thing is an absolute piece of garbage because it does the 3 times less damage than your auto attack. The 10-second cooldown ability that does damage based on how many conditions you have does 3 times less damage than a simple auto attack. The only thing that makes it worthy, maybe sometimes pressing, is a life force, but it's not even that. There are few abilities that are actually not worth clicking, and that is actually a very sad thing to do because you have a very limited amount of skills to press. Some of the skills in this game are an absolute nightmare and dreadfulness. Some of the skills here have a few mechanics rolled all into one skill, making it a far superior skill than anybody else that is actually reliant on using the skill more than anything else. For example, a pistol whip, as you guys will know. The everybody's beloved 100 Blades ability that is basically a channeled blade storm on a 10-second cooldown. Is it a 8-second cooldown? My bad. But the winner goes to a Heartseeker that actually has a gap closer, forward leap, built with a damage dealing, more damage dealing below 50% HP, and an execute at the same time. It is an absolute nightmare of the game, and it actually ruins the fun for everybody out there, because all eventually people do to be effective in this game is spam one button and they can get away with it. In fact, I'm gonna show you some awesome montage. I'm gonna even call it a blood money, my friends, where I show you how to Heartseeker spam as a thief to win the game. Beaten Y4 can't take much more. Here we go. Now, nothing wrong with me. 2, nothing wrong with me. 3, nothing wrong with me. 4, nothing wrong with me. 1, something's gotta give. 2, something's gotta give. 3, something's gotta give. Let the mouth breathers hit the Heartseekers. 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 Well, we will get to the thieves later on when it comes to game balancing and gameplay. But I'm gonna tell you one thing, that it's very sad. For me, it took only about 6 minutes to look up build online, Google it, and start playing and ruining everybody's fun like everybody else does. But anyway, let's get back to our evaluation, my friends. The last thing that can actually come remotely close to being a joker of a Heartseeker spam is the other skill system for a Mesmer, that called the Phantasm build, where he basically summons a bunch of mages. And believe it or not, he'd be just running around and mages would be soloing people, critting higher than the players themselves. And everybody in the community who doesn't play Mesmer hates that mechanic to guts. Because who would ever thought it would be possibly fun to actually play against a class that spams nothing but the images and let the images do all the work and all the damage for him. Nobody likes BM hunters because pets do way too much damage. Well, this is the same thing to even a greater extent. My overall grade for the skills is 4 out of 10, ranking it a horrendous experience. And it's not because they have a lack of skills, it's not because they only have 10 skills you can put on your bar. No, I played Guild Wars 1 and it actually felt freakishly awesome there. No, but because of a discrepancy in skills, especially mainly associated with the weapons. And in fact, the skills have the worst possible idea of scaling out of everything I ever remotely came close to seeing. There's a different stats, like for example a dot damage, condition damage increase, and a power damage, which basically affects your primary power damage, and the condition damage affects your dot damage. And for example, as a necromancer, I would have a power damage skills, weapon skills, baked into the weapons that have everything else a condition damage. The worst possible scaling where it's not worth going for power because you go fully condition damage, and yet you have a power reliant skills on your bar at the same time. And the last one is the different mechanics baked into one, and it's absolutely dreadful idea that the ArenaNet is going. Because honestly, I don't see any thieves using any other skills than the ones that give you the most output for their initiative points, which is basically sort of like a reverse combo points, but we'll get to that in the future. But yeah, different mechanics rolled into one skill because there's not enough room for the skills themselves. But when it comes to gear, I actually gonna have to give ArenaNet a big props to Guild Wars 2 developers, and I would strictly say that the gear, PvP gear in Guild Wars 2 is what it should be in all the MMOs across the board. It's free. It's free and it's required to have. And it has a free everything, including enchants, including weapons, including the armor and everything else. And this is glorious experience indeed, my friends, because as a PvPers, we want to have a chance of having an equal gear. We don't want to grind for it. We want a PvP, and we want a skill to be a defining factor, not the gear. In Guild Wars 2, there's no such thing as I have a PvE gear, I slain more dragons, therefore I'm supposed to win this game. No. In this game, it's absolutely more balanced in terms of the skill oriented. Of course, now you know my partake on the skills. But the only thing I would say, the only negative portion about it when it comes to gearing your tune is that some of the gear, some of the stats kind of benefit a little bit more towards certain builds than the other, and there's a little bit lack of customizations. For example, I would like to have a precision, vitality, and condition damage jewelry, which is one of your main stats generator, and unfortunately it is not possible to have. When it comes to picking your gear, it kinda does still promote the cookie cutter builds, but at least it does have a different offers for whatever you want to prefer. For example, me running a condition build, which is a dot damage, I can run with the undead, or I can run with afflicted. Afflicted is more like it towards the condition duration, while the other one directs for a little bit more survivability and a little bit more condition damage overall. So yes, you can actually have a lot of different customizations when the gear coming, and it's everything free. When it comes to rating the gear, I would give the ArenaNet a big props, 9 out of 10, with a severely saying that every MMO should actually take notice and copy their mechanics. There's absolutely no grind for PvP gear whatsoever. I don't know why a lot of MMOs think that if we grind more for a PvP gear, it makes more fun for us to play. No, for PvPers, we all want to make it all about the skill, not the gear. There's no such thing as a PvE in my PvP in terms of the gearing options, and there's a different customizable options that can alter your gameplay. There are absolutely no boring enchantments in this game whatsoever. You can pick whatever the enchantments you want that have a different stats in terms of the durations, their effects, and you can modify your gameplay according to that at all times. And it's actually quite nice because in fact, from the other type of enchants where it's like, well, this enchant will let you proc your damage, increasing your overall damage by X percentage or X PP power or X power whatsoever. No, the ones here are actually like increasing the duration on the frozen targets. The ones that here actually let you accumulate a little bit more power over time. The ones that actually when you swap the weapons they can inflict poison, and all of that good stuff that will let your nerd brain explode of different options when it comes to choosing your playstyle based on the gear options alone. Talents, or in this case traits. Oh boy, I feel like I'm a freaking Stewie Griffin here actually with his corporate complimentary sandwich.
Now then, I'm going to do something I call the compliment sandwich, where I say something good, then talk about where you need improvement, and then end with something good.
So, something bad, something bad, something bad. Oh, freaking traits in Guild Wars 2. Traits in Guild Wars 2 make absolutely no sense whatsoever to the greatest extent. For example, when you pick up the traits, you also build up your passive stats. For example, for me, it's a critical chance and a condition damage for the curses because I go for the dot damage. And then if I want to spec in a little bit more defensive, I have to spec in a death, and I have to take toughness and then boon duration that I don't usually use at all, which is an idle stat, and nobody likes the idle stats to pick that you don't like. And a lot of MMOs actually figure that out, even the Blizzard with the ability, with a way of reforging. And then we can go into soul reaping. Soul reaping is basically your shroud form. It also has a really good amount of your staff affecting skills that you can pick here, but the biggest problem is you have to force to spend into a crit damage. Now imagine a crit damage abilities that my abilities do like a 100 damage basically, and the dot of that ability will do 1000 damage, and then it increases my crit damage by 20%, so it gives me all 20 damage. Ooh, oh my god, that is so awesome. If against the people who have a 20,000 HP pulse, why not give me a freaking condition duration? But no, it's in a different trait system, and this is what I absolutely don't like about it, is because, and for example, if I want to go for that duration here, there's not anything absolutely I really want to pick when it comes to actually perpetrating to my dot gameplay. Horrible trait system. They need to separate the stats so you can spec in stats appropriately, and they need to rework the entire trait system where if you go for the dot damage, you can actually have those talents and those traits for the dot damage. Not while you're going for the dot damage build, that semi-defensive build, you have to pick up a lot of useless shit on the way. When it comes to talents and traits, I'll give it 1 out of 10 with a saying possibly the worst possible system out of everything I ever actually had experience with. I would say there's a lot of useless traits that are not affecting your spec. There's a lot of waste when it comes to stats. There's a horrible scaling when it comes to whatever you want to do. For example, if you are going for the primary damage, you might end up with a stat that increase your dot damage. Or if you go with the dot damage, you might have some stats that increase your primary damage. And the last one is it benefits some specs over the others. Depends on what. The whole thing is absolutely chaotically randomized across the place, and I have absolutely no idea how a developer could actually thought about it. A good way of doing it, for example, making the stats that increase our condition duration, put it on the top with absolutely no really good skills or traits to pick when it comes to actual affecting our conditions at all whatsoever. Big discrepancy between the stats versus traits, and they need to rework it. It's not fun for players, but to a great extent to actually spec do something they don't really want, so they could get something that they really want to at the same time. And it's also a horrible idea when it comes to balancing, because you won't be able to 100% balance yourself, because you have all different those needless factors affecting your spec at the same time. Okay, and now let's go to the aesthetics, and we need a Stewie Griffin for this again with his complimentary sandwich, my friends, because this one is actually amazing.
Let's see, something good. You look like Snoopy and it makes me smile. Where you need improvement, you have smelly dog farts.
Unlike Blizzard, with their ugly, stone, age, boring, simplified designs, ReinhartDaRussian actually put a lot of effort into showing us what the PvP gear can look like if you put a lot of effort into grinding. Badass shield, let's start with that. Anybody ever seen a badass shield? No? Just me? Yeah, that's probably why. The gear here is absolutely amazing, and it will make the director of Lord of the Rings cry like a little bitch, because the creativity of the armor, weapons, and all the stuff here far surpasses your average MMO or average fantasy created things. Unfortunately, just as an eye candy, this game is not gonna serve, and there's a lot of lacking things when it comes to PvP and your character development. I'm gonna give the looks here for the armor, and those are the ones I just picked that look kind of cool to me. There's a lot of them, just a lot of them, guys. But unfortunately, I would go with a 9 out of 10, or maybe even 8.5 out of 10 when it comes to the aesthetics. For one main particular reason is because they're looking cool as hell too. But there's also a Rift that comes up with a really incredible designs, and I think they're all on par. My personal perception is I think they're both actually kind of equally good. One gets better than the other at specific tiers and stuff, but overall a really great experience when it comes to gearing up your character and the looks and aesthetics out of it. So, and that's probably the struggling portion of the character overall, and of the game in just in general. The easiness to obtain the PvP gear, the creativity of the PvP gear, and the way it looks badass. So the gear portion about it, the aesthetic, is the strongest one, is the one that's carrying the character portion of this, but still not to the extent where it's gonna warrant to solely be playing this game just based on the looks itself. And now let's move on to the PvP structure, and here I'm looking for, first of all, what kind of PvP does the game have to offer? What kind of platforms of PvP does it have to offer? I'm looking for the class balance, looking for how's the class balance in terms of overall its strengths, and I'm also looking for an infrastructure. How's the game run? How's the game does when it comes to PvP? What do you do when you want a PvP? How do you get there, and what kind of experience are you having usually? So when it comes to PvP, what the game actually have to offer, it have to offer two different things. It can offer world versus world PvP, which is usually like Zerg versus Zerg. Which team has the most players usually win, because it's a world versus world PvP, and the node capturing maps. When Guild Wars 2 came out, they actually came up with the 3 different maps, and the 3 different maps have the same, absolutely the same core mechanic possible, is where you basically have to run around and capture the nodes, capture the key structures, key points. The only variation they had in the beginning was one had a lord, where you had an option to attack a lord and capture. This map had an option of using a trebuchet, the siege engines, and fire the flaming balls of fury on your enemies. And the next one you had, the last one you had, is actually the sort of like a water combat. This is one of those MMOs that does not support the dueling, the basic structure of the PvP, the basic way of people trying to find the ways to how to counter a specific class or build is not supported in this game. There's no dueling at all. It is possible for you to duel, but in order to get into dueling, what you basically need to do is you need to find this. There's a list of servers, and luckily, because everybody start playing this game, there's not much of a, you're not gonna have an issue of finding the empty server now. But the biggest thing is you're gonna have to join the simple server, the empty server, and once you get into that empty server, you and your friend can start dueling somewhere in a place. The biggest problem with that is that the random people that actually wanna PvP, they're gonna be forced to be joining your server because your server already will be marked as active. So people who wanna participate in PvP usually join those servers, and what do they find? They find the people who are trying to duel, and the people who are dueling usually say, "Hey buddy, can you back off please?" Or they would intervene randomly and basically ruin the dueling experience, because it would be like 2v1, and it's a very frustrating experience for both, because people who join just want to PvP, they don't give a shit about others dueling, and people who are dueling, they don't want to be interrupted. And this is kind of what the hell is going on? Why is a dueling is not implemented? Because what, people don't have a designated area? Well, it is possible to maybe like design a separate designated area where people would join and duel. It's really not that big of a deal. So for me, it took like just 5 seconds to find people who were dueling because of the way the server was located. There were so many feedbacks of asking implement arenas, implement dueling. And what did ArenaNet did? They heard all of our feedback and they come up with what? Another node capping map. No joke. The ArenaNet listened to all our feedback, asking about the class balance and everything, and what they came up with, another node capping map, the Temple of Rising Sun, or whatever that shit is called. But hey, guess what? Do not worry, because this is not the only type of PvP they actually come up with. They also came up with another node capping map, as if 3 node capping maps weren't enough. So they came up with another 2. How does that work? How is a multi-million-dollar company that comes up with a PvP designs, actively promotes PvP in their marketing, comes up with nothing else but a node capping maps? I get the feeling that the actual developers shot themselves in the foot with actually not introducing healers. No Holy Trinity. What's the funny thing is, when you actually do PvE, you still have to spec in like a tanky sort of variation when it comes to being a freaking tank and a warrior for PvE, but there's no healers at all whatsoever. Everybody has a healing spell, which is not bad, I guess, but keep in mind, when there's no healing classes, that means all the damage is effective, especially the pet damage, because it becomes infinitely stronger because you cannot out-heal through a pet damage. But the biggest problem with the actually ArenaNet shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to healers is that they cannot introduce arenas, they cannot introduce anything when it comes to actually people enjoying based on the combat mechanics, unless they're gonna do something. And my suggestion was, make a passive, like introduce arena, but make the arena team, the whole entire team would be receiving 6,000 healing per second. That's just a number, and with those 6,000 healing per second, basically it's gonna be distributed whoever is on lowest health points. So people are still gonna have to coordinate how to do a lot of damage, either spread damage or focus one target at the specific time. But keep in mind, for arenas to actually work, you're gonna have to have some sort of a healing coming in, because otherwise the classes with the most amount of escapes, like Thieves and Mesmers and a couple others, are gonna predominantly kill everybody there and survive the longest, because they can escape the damage other classes cannot. So when it comes to rating the PvP and what kind of PvP experience does the Guild Wars 2 have to offer, I'm giving it 1 out of 10. I wish I could give it negative, but it's not possible on my rating scale. And I would say even Rift has a lot more to offer than just a simple node capping. At least in Rift there's duels, there's node capping, there's objective capping, there's a flag capturing, there's holding the objective in terms of debuff on you. There's so many different variations. Even in Rift offers a lot more enhanced PvP experience, even though primarily it is a PvE game. So I guess when it's ready didn't really work out that well, but at least we can have a cool looking gear, right? Now when it comes to class balancing, I'm looking at the two main particular things here. I'm looking at the overall balance of the game, and I'm also looking for a downstate, because this is what the Guild Wars 2 came up with, the specific downstate where you are about to die, but you're not dead yet, you're just lying down there and pretend to be cute, pretty and funk. And I want to look at the balance of a downstate as well. So let's take a look at the class balance. Can somebody tell me what wrong do they see with this picture? It's a class representation. Do you see those two daggers? That's a thief class. How many of the thief classes are here? 9. Out of how many people are participating? 15. 9 out of 15 people are thieves. This is a random queue. 9 out of 15. Well, maybe I'm just trying to slander the game. It's not really that happening, or not that as often happening, but wait a sec, let's take a look at the different screenshots. Those all screenshots were taken during me playing the game. So in this one we have roughly 8 out of 10 people playing thieves. 8 out of 10 people in the random battleground playing thief class. And sometimes you might actually get lucky and you might not get 60 to 80% of a thief population. You might get 50% like in this one or less. But it usually happens very rare, and for one main reason, because thief is probably the easiest class to play in the game. Now let's go back to our beloved Heartseeker, and this is the Heartseeker in action. This is the type of ability that does way too much damage and have way too many core mechanics built into it compared to the most of the things. The two most irritating things is ability stacking like a Heartseeker that pisses everybody off, no exception, unless you're playing this class. And the second one is the pets. The pet damage, especially for Mesmers, pet damage is huge. I would be getting crit by like almost 20% of my HP with one attack from the pet. 20% of your HP. That's like a freaking Iceland's crit when you're defrozen and the mage pops all his cooldowns. And you like casually, hey, what's up, babe? My pet just mangled the crap out of you. What's up, dude? No big deal, I'm just chilling, letting my pet do all the work. Injury. The mage class Mesmer in this game can also stealth roughly about 4 times and have a multiple escapes, and basically won't ever die unless you severely have a Down syndrome type of thing. And the first time I actually played a Mesmer class, I was able to 1v3 people without even putting any effort at all whatsoever, because just the class is so predominantly strong, and it was a joke, a little joke. I mean, how is it justifiable for the class to have pets that do basically crit up to 20% of your HP, can also have 3 or 4 different vanishes at the same time? Yes, you see all the damage numbers are coming from the pets, not me personally. In fact, I was trolling in this battleground. What I actually did is I let my pets do all the work. I didn't do any damage personally myself. I just sat in the middle, spammed the shit tons of pets, and they basically stealth myself. And even though this is not the best ideal gameplay when it comes to high rated PvP, the funny thing that actually came out of it is that I was able to do so, and I was a top 3rd on objectives, because I was just able to stay in the fight for such a long time. Funny. I really feel like one of those dudes in the Die Hard movie when he says, "Do you know what I hate about the Americans?"
You know what I hate about the Americans? Everything.
Do you know what I hate about mages and rogues? Everything. I despise that they're masquerade by how squishy they are and having a multiple escape mechanics. I despise how easy it is to play one in order to be effective. I despise how little skills it takes and how easy it is to get it into a PvP. That's what I despise. And the biggest thing I despise about mages and thieves is that they're predominantly designed and balanced around not having fun themselves, but ruining other people's fun. They're designed about everything that I personally despise and hate the most. Downstate? Oh fuck, it's broken to shits as well. It is actually like broken to the absolutely abominable extent. Some classes have way too good of a downstate, and some actually have the worst possible downstate. The worst possible downstate probably rangers, necromancers and elementals, and maybe guardians to some extent. And the best one, guess who have it? Thief, mesmers and warriors. But warriors are not being that viable, so who gives a shit about them? For example, as a necromancer, all I can is basically fear a person for 1 second, maybe put a poison on it and do a little bit of a life drain, which is really not helping me to survive, because in Downstate you are forced to kind of hold yourself up and basically trying to survive as much as possible. But in Thief, if you pre-stealth yourself properly, you can actually survive and heal yourself up, and you can actually port out of the harm's way too, which is actually a very comical and very easy thing to do. And you can stealth yourself, and that's why the Downstate is much better for, let's say, thieves and mesmers. Let's not actually forget the mesmers Downstate for a second here. What sucks about fighting a mesmer in a Downstate, you're also gonna have his pets that do damage to you while you're in a Downstate. So if you're fighting against a mesmer can put out illusions, can stealth out while he's in Downstate, but the worst possible about everything, he actually legitimately have the pets attacking you. So if you had a good fight and you managed to get the mesmer to Downstate and you're in a Downstate yourself, forget about actually winning the fight, because his pets will mangle the living crap out of you. When it comes to PP, I think that a few classes are like very rock, paper, scissors based in the game, with also additions of a few classes being a freaking spark, being a predator, being a freaking alien in the game, and also a freaking Darth Vader. Yeah, that's how I feel like. Sometimes I feel like a freaking paper fighting against a predator and have a predator heartseeker right into my anus. And this is not fun, my friends. So when it comes to class balance, I would say run the hell away from it. And it's based on the node capping, not the actual team fights and the node capping. The most comical is that when you start arguing about the class balance and show how the class stacking is in effect in this game, like you saw, you're queuing against 80% of the thieves and you're not having fun. When you're actually saying that, here's what they say. They say that if you go for a tournament, at the lower brackets maybe not, but at high, very high brackets, it gets way more balance. Like it gets a lot more balance when it comes to, again, on the tournaments. But the problem with that is that if you want to actually practice yourself, you're probably gonna want to have to do some of the random battlegrounds just to get used to the new mechanics and get familiar with it, so you're not gonna be a full noob. So if you want to get familiar with those, you have to queue for the random ones, and in the random ones you have a chance of getting that freaking 80% pre-made thief or some shit like that. And if you're not gonna do that, if you're gonna just queue straight for the tournaments right off the start, you're just gonna ruin your own name, because people are gonna call you a noob, because that's what you're gonna be in the beginning. You're gonna be a noob trying to learn the PvP in this game. So I don't know how this invisible thing works in terms of, hey, don't worry, maybe someday, one day you get to this invisible rating and stuff where it's not gonna be class stacking. I don't know how it works, but I never personally experienced it at all. So my overall for the class balance is 3 out of 10. There's a few abilities that hard counter game mechanics, like a null void from Mesmer that completely can negate all his damage, and I think that right now in PvP, when it comes to tournaments, there are mandatory classes, for example, Bunker, Allies, and Thieves, Guardians, and Mesmers, and then the rest is like, yeah, maybe we're gonna take you if you're gonna be lucky and you can prove yourself. So when I think of the class balance, I think it's very unfair, and this is kind of unfortunate. And don't get me wrong, none of the games are balanced when it comes to class balancing, but I get the feeling that the Guild Wars 2 balancing the classes for the wrong reasons when it comes to node capping than actually focusing on balancing the team fights and individual skills. When it comes to PvP infrastructure, I'm gonna give it 1 out of 10 right at the start. I'm not gonna even bother making a lot about it. The only thing I'm gonna say is it's non-existent. Okay, you can be queuing for tournaments as a solo queue, meaning you queue by yourself, and guess what, you can get a full pre-made that's gonna plaster the crap out of you, and they're also gonna talk shit in the chat how calling you terrible because they win against you and they're pre-made and you're nothing. And the actual MMR system doesn't work for jack shit also. There's supposedly an invisible rating that nobody can see except maybe yourself, and the another thing is about this is that there's no MMR at all whatsoever. Pros can queue against the noobs, and the noobs can queue against the pros. Now don't get me wrong, the same thing happens in the World of Warcraft as well, but in Guild Wars 2 at least it's not like you're gonna lose a lot. In Guild Wars 2 everything is based on you win or you lose, you win or you lose. There is no such thing as you win, you get X amount of points or Y amount of points, or at least not yet that I saw of. In Guild Wars 2 it's all about win or lose, and playing against a pre-made is not fun. Playing against the professional players is not fun also. So yeah, that shit needs to be worked as well. Now last but not least, and this is gonna be a very short one hopefully, because this video is awfully long, and if you manage to sit through 32 minutes of me whining about how this game is unbalanced, keep in mind that this is the reason why I'm venting out about it, is because I had a really good high hopes and I actually promoted this game wholeheartedly until I actually was kind of had my dreams shattered. But anyway, let's keep going here. In PvP support, I'm looking for a community, I'm looking for developer support, and I'm looking for a support for gamers. So let's get started here. The PvP community in Guild Wars 2 is actually pretty good, to my surprise. There's a lot of fanboys and there's a lot of haters. When I actually made my blog post, somebody posted on the Guild Wars 2 forums, and the post was why I stopped having fun. I was flamed for everything, absolutely possibly can, by fanboys. Called me an idiot, stupid, and whatever it is, always happens. And there's also people who saying, hey, you know, they can actually make sense, this guy makes sense, or whatever it is, whether my suggestions are valid or not. This is what kind of feedback I got. I got a feedback in terms of get the hell out of here, stop playing this game, stop whining, or something like, you know what, you make actually valid points, and hopefully ArenaNet will seize this. So there's a very, very different spectrums, but it's in every single MMO. It's a usual stuff. But surprisingly, community is actually very tolerant to new players. They actually sometimes try to help you, especially in the game, which I found very, very surprising. And yeah, of course, shit like that happens all the time, where people are like, oh, thieves don't take any skill to play, what the hell is wrong with you? And the thieves will be like, chololol, you mad, bro? Shit happens like that all the time. Okay, now when it comes to development, I don't really have a lot of good things to say here. Unfortunately, I would say it's a bait and switch kind of thing, where they actually advertise Guild Wars 2 as they care about it. They said that they're gonna try to make esports out of it before the game came out. They actually like showed a lot of PvP content, a lot of PvP movies. There's been a lot of PvP going on. There's like a lot of testing there's like in beta testing, and a lot of stuff was, but in all honesty, still when it came out, it was just a node capping, and they did not say it. They did not state it was the main priority of the game was a PvE. We're talking about how PvP almost as equal as core mechanic to the game, but right now I don't think it's supported at all whatsoever. And I'm talking about responding to forums. Every developer can do that. Even my dog can respond to forums and forum threads, but it doesn't matter because they still haven't done any progress. And please don't shove this shit into my face where it's like, well, guess what, the game is just relatively new, why it doesn't have something to offer, because I'm gonna have rebuttal at that I already answered that rebuttal in the very beginning. So Guild Wars 1 I think was a far superior platform because it just offered a lot of good, like, positive experience. It had arenas in there where people liked and enjoyed playing arenas. They liked in terms of coordinating their control and damage instead of just randomly node capping. There were a few battlegrounds too where you actually can queue into it, and they were very objective based, and in those you were playing like objectives. But right now I think that developers kind of trying to shove their perception of balance right into your throats, and mostly has to do with the node capping, the most boring and useless mechanic ever possible. But when it comes to actually supporting gamers, surprisingly Guild Wars 2 comes up ahead, comes up of World of Warcraft or anybody else, any other MMO whatsoever. Amazing support for gamers. I'm giving it actually 10 out of 10 because they do link YouTube videos, they do link the streams, they do actually show appreciation to people who are constantly providing a content for Guild Wars 2 when it comes to either PvP or PvE. They supported and promoted multiple streamers or multiple YouTubers through their forums, through their gaming platforms, and I think that is great. That is amazing, and that's what every single MMO, every single game out there is supposed to be doing, is supporting the players who actually play the game, supporting those passionate people who actually playing the game and love playing it and actually want to kind of support the game and actually provide a valid feedback, provide something to the game, not just consuming and playing it. So with that said, kudos to the support for gamers. So my overall ratings are for this bracket. So my overall review for this is 7 out of 10 for the community. I think community is actually very helpful. They're actually trying to help you get better, which is awesome. It's not very often you can see that. For the development support I put 2 out of 10, and yes, they respond sometimes, but they do not respond to valid things like why there's no arena, why there's no dueling. They only come up with the 2 node capping after 5 months of worth of balancing and stuff. So in terms of, I think that a lot of praise and a lot of like feedback comes to that follows to the dev years when it comes to development support. In fact, I think maybe even Blizzard have a little bit more of a development support than actually Guild Wars 2. At least Blizzard come up with a, like, they actually banned the two different battlegrounds when it comes to Silver Shard Mines and Temple from rated battlegrounds. Blizzard came up with a new arena for this new season coming up, and they actually do some balancing now, whether we agree with it or not, but at least it happens way more frequently right now, not before, not in 4.3, but right now it happens more often. So I would say the development support is severely lacking in this game, but support for gamers, I give it 9 out of 10. Amazing job. Amazing job, and I hope a lot of people will actually, or a lot of games will actually model this type of thing. So now it comes with giving actually my final verdict or total rating. So far I have skills ranked 4 out of 10 because I believe that there's a big imbalance in terms of the skills. One proved to be way too powerful and one proved to be way too completely useless. For example, Feats of the Corruption on a Necromancer versus a Heartseeker. For gear, the way that it's easy to find gear, the way how it actually sets works, I give it 9 out of 10. One of the best I've seen so far. Great job there. For talents, I give 1 out of 10 because they're boring. You have to get a lot of useless stats, you do a lot of stats wasting, and I completely hate it. For aesthetics and looks, I give it 8 out of 10, and it's by far one of the better ratings I've got so far. I believe that the Rift can actually compete with Guild Wars 2, but Guild Wars 2 I think is the best looking aesthetically MMO out there, including the Rift. Experience, in terms of what kind of PvP has to offer, there's only a node capping or world versus world, so this is by far the worst PvP MMO has to offer yet, and that's why I'm giving it 1 out of 10. In terms of class balance, I give it 3 out of 10. It's very imbalanced. The class stacking is in the game, the easiness of a few professions compared to the other ones, all of that ruins experience and makes the game very unbalanced. Infrastructure, in terms of queues for tournaments and everything, it's randomized. There's no order at all whatsoever. Freaking premates can play against a solo queue, and this is probably the most points I ever docked off here possible. I have no idea what kind of genius came up with the idea that premates have to be queued at the same time, just a random. Imagine you're doing a rated battleground and you queue as a randomite and you fight against like freaking top rank 1 premate for rated battlegrounds. How much fun would that be? Not at all. When it comes to community, I give it 7 out of 10. I think the community overall in Guild Wars 2 is a little bit better and smarter than the community in actual WoW, but hence I said a little bit. The biggest points I actually buffed up here is because they support new players, while everybody else, most other games, they actually look down upon you being a new player. But the thing I hated the most about the community is the idea of, oh, you don't like the game, don't give a feedback, get the fuck out. And this is kind of ruins the game, I think, especially from within. And development support, I give it 2. Yes, they listen, yes, they respond to forums, but they're not doing a jack crap. They producing more node capping maps is not gonna fix the PvP in the game. They have to look way more deeper in there. And the support for gamers, I give it 9 out of 10 because the game actually does legitimately support their gamers, and this is commendable. So when it comes to giving a total rating for this game, I came up with a 4.5, and the biggest question is, should you actually buy this game? If it's for PvE reasons, yes, you should buy it. If it's for PvP, no, not at all whatsoever. Run from it. Run as fast as you can, because this game does need a lot of work when it comes to PvP. And no matter how much they advertised it in terms of being really good for PvP, it's not. It's not at all. It doesn't support the infrastructure. 4.5 is a very, very poor rating indeed. It's probably one of the worst ratings I'm actually gonna give to MMOs in general. And when it comes to actual fun of it, no, not at all. It's not fun. It's actually very excruciating, painful. At least it was actually for me. And the last thing I want to say is, I feel that this is one of those cycles where Guild Wars 1 was a far superior platform than Guild Wars 2. I believe that actually Guild Wars 2 failed miserably. It failed on a lot of expectations and a lot of hopes from the community, and kind of made a bait and switch, and I absolutely hate that fact. I hate that the predecessor, an expansion, a build up on something is doing much more poorly than their original game. I think the Guild Wars 1 is way more fun to play when it comes to PvP, extremely more fun to play when it comes to PvP, and I don't know, I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed in the game in general. I do not believe that so many years of production could warrant it this much of an abomination when it comes to PvP. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this excruciating long video. Hopefully you guys liked it, and if you did, give me a thumbs up. If you hate my guts for criticizing the crap out of this game, give me a dislike button or leave a comment, whatever it is. This is my personal perception, this is my personal opinion. You like it, awesome. You don't like it, I don't care. If you think you can do a better job than me, by all means, go for it. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and до свидания.